just so we can go ahead and get through this and provide you all with kind of a good sense of the resources that now all DCSAA member schools have access to for college preparation resources. So that's kind of what's on the agenda for today, and that's what we're going to cover. And it's really great too to speak with so many of you in terms of what's going on here. Essentially, just to kind of give you a little background, my name is Neil Count. I'm the CEO for Livius, we've partnered up with the DCSAA to provide these resources for all of your schools and all of your students and families for free. And so we're going to cover what those resources are today. A little background, like I said, I actually lived in the Washington, D.C. area for a couple of years, about 15 years ago. So it's kind of nice to come full circle and bring something back to you all. And that's what I'm really excited to talk to you all about today. Just, again, understanding how everything's going. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Hang on one second there. So I always like to start off with this picture, just because I know what things are like right now. So I work with a lot of schools around the country, and just understanding what you're all going through from a pandemic perspective, switching from hybrid to remote to fully in person. And then on top of that, providing them with some level of guidance around what's becoming a more complex process with the college prep process. It's a challenge. And we know this is how students are feeling. We know this is how parents are feeling. So the unfortunate part about this, though, is that even though we might all be feeling this way, the requirements when it comes to getting into college are not really changing that much. I know some schools have gone test optional, but not many of them have gone test blind, right? Only a couple have gone test blind, which means you can't even submit an SAT or ACT score. Everyone else, you can still submit an SAT or ACT score. And I'll tell you right now, if you're not submitting a score as a student, you're in a much tougher position to get into that school versus someone who might have the same kind of profile as you, academically speaking, and then they submit a good score. You're not really putting yourself in that good position. So, really what we wanted to do was really try to level that playing field, because honestly, that's what's going on right now, is that what has already been somewhat of a disproportionate process, which is the college admissions process, is getting a little bit more disproportionate, right? In the sense that those who have the ability to go out there, prep, take the test, do all those things related to the college admissions process, they're in a much more advantageous position right now, because many students are not able to, whether it be afford programs or take the test or leverage those different things to kind of put themselves at an advantageous position to apply to college. So what our goal was to do in partnering with the DCSAA was to put together a program that is not checking the box. It's really leveling the playing field. That's what our goal was to do, is can we put together, leverage our 35 years of expertise. So, Livius has been around since 1984. And as such, we've had access to just amazing faculty members who, for the last 35 years, whose sole focus was really the college admissions process and everything that goes into that. And so for the last 3 decades, we've been building programs, resources, tools that really help give kids that competitive edge when it comes to applying to college. So what we wanted to do, though, was put it into a format now that everyone can access to really focus on leveling that playing field. And so today I'm going to share with you a small aspect of that you will have access to. Okay, so that's really what our goal is today. But first, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself, because I know many of you might not know me unless you're kind of based in the Boston area. So my name is Neil Count. I'm the CEO for Livius. I've been here since 2015. Okay, although Livius has been around for 30 years prior to that. Livius has been in operation for over 35 years. We've completed over 1 million tutoring sessions around the world. We work with schools, we work with students around the country and around the world. But again, our main focus really is that college admissions process. We certainly do tutoring for lower grade levels, but for the most part, when it comes to the SATs, the ACTs, the college counseling process, that entire focus, it's what we do best, and it's what we focused on for 3 decades. Personally, for me, I've grown and operated online education companies in all levels of education. So my focus is online education. It's what I've done for different levels, from all the way from pre-K to adult workforce training. It's what my focus is. And as a result, I've been able to consult with schools, districts, and administrators around the country on kind of college admission solutions. And I'm happy to kind of answer any questions related to that. Um, I'm also the author of Hacking the SAT, which is actually now available on Amazon and Target. You can go ahead and find it there, and been featured in Forbes and Entrepreneur Magazine, more related to how companies and organizations can really leverage online learning. So that's a little bit about me. Okay. But before that, I was this guy. Okay. And so this was me about, gosh, way more than 2 decades ago. And this was my first day of high school. So I went to a high school in Massachusetts. It was a, for lack of a better term, discount private education. It was just a really affordable private school. It was an all boys private school in kind of the central part of Massachusetts here. And so it was one of those schools that was pretty competitive, right? In the sense, not only academically, but athletically. So, you're dealing with kids that are going to schools all around the state, and then they come to this high school at grade 9, right? So we're all just kind of young students just getting to know each other. So, what I did is that I had always enjoyed sports. So I started getting involved with sports. So I tried out for the soccer team and I got cut. I didn't even I didn't even get close. So what I decided to do was that, a friend of mine who I went to middle school with, he was a great runner, and he was really fast. And so but obviously running fast in middle school is different than high school. So we both decided to join the cross country team. And so the cross country team was, for me, it was just an opportunity to get to know other students, when you're getting into high school, you want to feel like you belong. And so I joined the cross country team, and I was very nervous, right? Because I had never really done any distance running. And so the thought of running 3.1 miles through trails and up and down hills was was scary to say the least. I mean, purely it was at first this was just about survival. But we had a great coach who just kind of walked us through it, and we kind of worked our way up. Right. I remember the first day of practice, we're all there stretching, and they're like, "Okay, we're going to do 2 miles today." And I'm sitting there looking at my friend saying, "I have no idea how I'm going to get through this." But you get through it, right? And you kind of surprise yourself at kind of how much you can kind of get involved with this. So I continued to kind of practice, and then it's the fall, and then races start to happen. And, I remember the first race, it was 3.1 miles, and I finished it. And I don't think I could even see straight. I mean, it was unbelievable. But you continue to progress. You continue to make advancements in your training and your nutrition and everything you need to do to run better. Right. And then I remember there was one specific race. Okay. So this was a race that was called Doherty High School. It was a high school based in Massachusetts. And they had this kind of trail that was like super in the woods. There were rocks. I mean, it was really hard to kind of get through it. That's not me, obviously, but that expression I feel is accurate to kind of how I felt kind of running through it. And I remember I was going through the race, and the thing that was a little surprising was there were these upperclassmen there, and I was just passing them, right? And I've never really been a particularly fast runner. And they were saying, "Go, Neil, go," right? Like, and they were just telling me to go. And I was blown away at how I was passing them. And I got to the end, and my coach told me my time, and I'm like, I can't believe I did that, right? And it was amazing, right? And so I really got into it, and then did winter track. But then and so my friend Tim, he was way better than me, right? And so he was the one who introduced me. He was one of the better runners on the team. So we both did winter track, and then in the spring I decided to play tennis because I've always been interested in tennis, and I made the team, and I decided to do it. My friend Tim continued with spring track, and then he ran all summer. So when we came back our sophomore year, again, that picture is not me, but when I came back my sophomore year, I was so overconfident, right? Like I got into that, those first practices. And I remember looking at the freshmen who just started, who were, wide eyed and saying like, "Oh God, how am I going to get through this?" And I'm just laughing like, "Oh, come on, it's not that bad." And, and I sat there and I said, "Listen, I've already been in the zone. I know what I need to do. It's going to be a lot of work." And I don't think I really wanted to do that work, as much effort as I put in my freshman year. And then I remember we went back to that same high school. We went back to that same race. And now I was the upperclassman who was getting passed by the freshmen, right? They were running past me. And I remember being so dejected and being just so frustrated by that I quit, right? I didn't run cross country anymore after that, right? And my friend Tim, he continued with it, right? Because he did spring track, he ran over the summer, and he ended up getting a scholarship to Providence College, which is one of the better running programs in the Northeast. And so, not that I would have gone down that path, but the point is that I definitely gave up, right? I mean, I relented when that adversity hit me. It was just not something I wanted to continue, and I was just so frustrated by it. The reason I bring this up is that what I just described is the exact path we see with the majority of students when it comes to the college prep process. Not just the college prep process, but more specifically SAT and ACT prep. That exact process that I just went through, let me share with you exactly how it applies. So here's what we see when it comes to the entire testing timeline, okay? Students take their PSAT their junior year, and I'm just giving you a sense of like how they practice, right? And how they prepare. Students take their PSAT their junior year. Again, we know in some cases this year, that's not even happening. But then they take a practice test at some point, January, February, something like that. They take their first test, and then they take another practice test, and then they take their second test. This is just kind of a high level process, right, for what we see. Now, we've done a lot of research into this space, and what we can tell you definitively is when score improvement actually happens. It's not the PSAT, it's not the practice test. Here's what we see. After a student sits for an actual conditions exam, their first test, after that point is what we call the zone of score improvement, okay? This is when score improvement actually happens, okay? So this is what we've seen from working with, doing over 1 million tutoring sessions and working with over 50,000 students, is that score improvement does not happen to this point. It doesn't matter how much prep you do, right? Like, and what I mean score improvement, I mean real score improvement. I'm not talking about 50 to 100 points. I'm talking the 200 or 250 points on the SAT or the 6 to 8 points on the ACT that we now see today, okay? Those types of score increases are not what we used to get, 20, 30 years ago, right? I mean, 20, 30 years ago, the guarantees around prep programs were around, can you just get a higher score than your practice test, which means like 1 point or 10 points, right? So that's not the case today. Kids are getting, on average, 200 to 250 points, 6 to 8 points on the ACT. They're doing it because this zone of score improvement is really becoming more clear for people. But that's for those that get to that point. What we're seeing, though, in the vast majority of students is this. Here's what happens. Most kids, they take the PSAT and then they spend whatever investment they were going to make in prep, whether it be time and or money, they make it between the time they take the PSAT and the time they take that first test. Okay, this is when we see the majority of investment of time and resources goes into this point here, right? And they get their score back and they're generally not all that thrilled, right? Like, oh, geez, 60, 80 points, 2 or 3 points on the ACT. I didn't make much of an improvement. So now they're sitting there in March and they're saying to themselves, if I really want any level more of an increase, I have to do that exact same process again. I have to spend that much time. I have to spend more time now. I have to spend more money now to get any level of score improvement. And they basically give up, right? The students that are able, though, to really get that high increase, those 200-point increases, it's because they have a blueprint. They have now taken what they learned in these past several months, the thousands of dollars that they spend in some cases, and they have been able to build a blueprint for their specific testing profile that they can now utilize to be incredibly strategic, incredibly efficient, and incredibly impactful towards getting real score improvement. Okay. This is what the difference is between those students that are becoming extremely successful in these exams and those that give up. Okay. And the good part is that the program we're going to share with you that all of your students get for free is going to get them to this zone faster, and they're going to walk away with a blueprint. How they go from there in terms of prep, one-on-one tutoring classes or self-prep is up to them. But we're at least getting to them to this point way faster and with a blueprint in hand for them to go ahead and move forward with. All right, so let's talk about that. So what is this blueprint? Okay, and I think this is really important for you to understand, is that when you look at the test, when you look at the SATs and the ACTs, the questions are broken down into 3 buckets: easy, medium, and hard. Okay, so what we consider easy questions are questions that you're just kind of recognizing the academic subject, right? So like the easier questions are like, let's just take like a vocab question, right? Like you understand you've got the word directed. What is the definition for the word directed, right? So like a basic definition, question answer type thing, right? So like Those are easy questions, right? You recognize the academic subject, you answer the multiple choice, you move on, okay? The majority of test prep classes cover this, right? So like if you take a test prep class, you're generally covering the academic subjects that you already learned, right? And then you're practicing those questions. That's good enough to cover the easier questions, but when it comes to the medium and hard questions on the test, you need strategies. You need actual strategies because these tests are long. They are diverse in kind of the way that they ask these questions. And you really need to be equipped with strategies to really then make that improvement. Okay. So academic, if you prep just doing practice question after practice question, right? There's great resources like Khan Academy out there that you can take thousands of practice questions. That's good enough to get you a nominal increase. But if you're looking to be competitive, which most students are, if you want to get that 200, 250 point score increase, you need to equip yourself with strategies that are really going to allow you to beat this test, because these tests can be beaten, okay? And so that's really what we're talking about here, is how do we get them to that point, okay? So I want to give you an example of a strategy, real quick example, okay? So when we think about vocab, right? And vocab on the SATs and the ACTs isn't your typical vocab. It's called multiple meaning words, right? So these are words that have multiple meanings, right? And then you have to answer them in context. So we have a strategy that's just called vocab in context. We should probably do a better name with that strategy, but it's basically vocab in context, okay? And so this is what I would say is one of our absolutely more basic strategies, okay? But it's incredibly impactful, and I want to show you why. So let's take this question, okay? So let's say you're in the reading comprehension section. You got a bunch of questions that you got to take, okay? So, or you have to complete. So, and you're under time, right? So you got to move quick. So this is a question that you wouldn't believe how often kids get tripped up with this, okay? So this is a simple question, right? But it's actually labeled as more of a medium type question on the SATs and the ACTs because it's in context. There's multiple meanings here, right? So let's just look at the question real quickly. As used in line 26 of the passage, directed most nearly means one of the four. Here's where kids get tripped up. All four mean the word directed. They are derivatives of the word directed, okay? So you can't just look at that and answer it. You got to go back to the passage. So the passage, you just have to look at the passage and you look at the sentence, right? So the sentence starts here, right? So it's a long sentence, of course, right? So I'll read it quickly, very quickly, okay? Even before Miss Taylor had ceased to hold the nominal office of governess, the mildness of her temper had hardly allowed her to impose any restraint. In the shadow of authority being now long passed away, they had been living together as friend and friend, very mutually attached. And Emma, doing what she liked, highly esteeming Miss Taylor's judgment, but directed chiefly by her own. So the word directed is what we're being asked here. So what our strategy is, it's in one simple statement. Just replace the word directed with a word that you are very familiar with, a very basic word, and then plug it into that sentence, right? So when we work with students on this question, the word that we always hear is the word led, right? But led chiefly by her own. So now you just take that word led and you go back to this question, right? And you just plug it in. So which one means the word? What means led? Trained? Nope. Aimed? Nope. Addressed? No. Guided, right? Guided means led, right? Synonymous, right? And that's how you answer the question. That's the right answer. So while this doesn't seem very game breaking, while you're a student in the middle of a test, right? In the SAT, you got 154 questions. In the ACT, you got 210 questions, right? It's a pressure test, right? So like having a strategy like this, when you see that question type and you're like, boom, I know exactly how to answer it, that means a lot. And let me share with you why that matters. On average, per passage in these tests, there are 2 questions on average that tie to vocab and context. There's about 5 passages per reading section, right? That's about 10 questions. So for most kids that end up really, that don't do well on this, which is the majority of kids out there, this is a difference of 70 points on the SAT. This is a difference of 3 points on the ACT. These strategies matter. This is the difference that gets those triple-digit score increases that are now the norm, because kids are able to understand these strategies, and now they're able to go in the test confidently, say, I got that question down. I'm gonna knock this one out of the park. Okay. But what strategies should you focus on? And this is the last part that we'll cover. Okay. So when it comes to the test, It's what we always focus on is score yield. What are the areas that are going to give you the biggest return for your effort? Okay. And what we do is we provide students with this blueprint, their personal blueprint in terms of score yield. What is going to get them that return? Okay. How do you find it? First, you look at the high frequency opportunities. So let's look at this math SAT one. Okay. So what we do is that in all of our test reports, we break it down by frequency: least, moderately frequent, and most frequent. You're not going to want to spend time on the moderately and least frequent. If you're in a class, you're going to cover those topics. You're wasting your time. You're doing practice questions related to this. You're wasting your time. You need to focus in on the most frequent and frequent opportunities. That's going to get you that score yield. That's going to allow you to be way more efficient in your preparation process. So in this case, in this student, it's quadratic systems and polynomials. We have a strategy related to that. No, and sorry, actually, let me just back up here. So we have a strategy related to that. It's called the Know Your Math Challenge. Okay. So in the Know Your Math Challenge, what you're going to do is that you're going to practice specifically related to polynomials and quadratic systems. And then you're going to then master those types of questions, right? So now you are equipped with strategies and practice for specific areas that are going to be the highest yield for you as a student, right? So now as a student, you don't have to sit there and say, oh gosh, I got to do all this prep. I got to do all these practice questions. No, we know you don't have the time for that, or you don't want to do that, right? But if you could focus in on the areas that are those higher yield opportunities for you individually, that's where you're going to make that score impact. That's where you're going to build confidence and ultimately lead to a much better college admissions process. So for example, with this student, we did this exact same process, right? As part of our comparison test. So we're able to understand, well, if you focused in on the easier questions, right? You did a prep class, did the easier questions, you're going to get a 40-point increase, right? But for this student, we're able to figure out specifically where their struggles were, focused on those high yield opportunities, and then did the strategy work, the practice work. This student increased by 220 points because we're able to focus in on the easy and medium questions, right? So that's really where this comes together, is that you find the high frequency opportunities, you validate against easy, medium, hard, you apply the strategies, practice, and then execute. And that's how you get your score increase. And the good part about these tests, you can take the test as many times as you want. So if you didn't execute the first test, you got a couple more chances to take it again. So that's the idea here, is we're trying to help students understand is that you can beat these tests, but you need to do it in a way where you've got that blueprint. Otherwise, you're going to waste you could waste thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours practicing things that you don't need to be spending time on. Okay. I explain all of this because this is just one part of the application process. And you all know this. Okay. I'm talking to the experts here. But what I want you to understand is that as part of our partnership, your students are going to get access to this. Okay. So the first thing we do is called the SAT ACT Foundations Program. Okay. And I'm just going to walk through a couple of the resources, and then, you can see the email that's got the rest of it. But the whole idea with the Foundations program is we're getting to them to that zone of score improvement within 30 days. Okay. So we run these programs, the students have access to it. And so what they do is they do 4 live foundational classes. They're about an hour and a half each. So it doesn't take a lot to get students to that point of prep where they're at least ready to take an actual conditions test, right? So like we focus on very specific areas that build that foundation, both for the SAT and the ACT. We do that. They take a live class. Most likely it's with Jason Breikoff, who's our head of faculty. He does an amazing job on these classes. We then do a simulated online practice test for SAT or ACT. Some students might not be ready or can't afford to take all these tests all the time. So as part of this program, they can do a simulated online practice test with us. So it's proctored. They log into a Zoom just like this. There's a proctor there. They're with hundreds of other students. They take the practice test. They got the materials with them. And then they take the test and they send it back in for their score report. And what we return them back is the score analysis report, which is 10 pages long, which goes through all of what I just talked about before in terms of the score yield, the frequency, and then also which test should they be taking, the SAT, ACT. Okay. This program is normally $8.99. 100% free for all of your students. Okay. So on our site, this program is listed as $8.99. We offer this as a part of this partnership. Your students get this access for this for free. Then we offer the Livius SAT ACT comparison test. So some kids weren't able to take the PSAT. Okay. So this program I don't want to say a replacement for the PSAT because we don't offer obviously national merit scholarships or anything like that. But in terms of the value that you get from it, what you're getting is significantly more, okay? You're getting a simulated live proctored online practice test. You're going to get exposure to both SAT and ACT formats. Students can also take it on their own. So if they can't make the test date that we hold them regularly. If they can't, they can take it on their own. And they're going to get back a 10-page detailed report on their test results, okay? So that's going to include which test is best for them, right? So the foundations program, again, I want to make this clear. The foundations program that we just talked about before is the class, is the class, the practice test, and the report, right? So in this one, this is the comparison test. This is going to help them before they even start that class, right? So they can understand which test should I take, SAT or ACT. Then they can choose a foundations program. Do I do the SAT foundations or the ACT foundations program? Okay. This is something extra that we're bringing to our partnership. $99 registration fee. It's completely free. Okay. So for DCSAA member schools, you're getting the foundations class. You're getting the comparison test. You're also getting a college applications foundations program. Okay. So what we've done is we've taken all of our best college essay strategies, college application strategies, and we've boiled them down into a program that we offer. It's a live class that we talk about college essay strategies, your thematic approach, what you want to do to really maximize your college application process. Okay. So your students get access to that for free as well. You also get a dedicated account manager. And then we also do have private options. Okay. So this program, what we do is we run this according to a schedule that's run throughout the year. Okay. So your students are going to have access to that. So your dedicated account manager is going to set you up with the communication tools and resources that you need. So you can go ahead and send this out to any parents, families, other schools, whatever you want to do with it. But we do want to make sure that you've got the right communication resources and that everything's organized. Okay. So we do have that. However, there are some schools that elect to do a private program. That program is not free, but it's also not expensive either. So it's, that's something where if you wanted to do just a private SAT program, private SAT foundations program for your school, you could totally do that. The reason you'd want to do that is we could level it. We also give you group level data. There's a whole other part to that, but that's something your account manager can talk to you. But everything I've talked about today, completely free. Okay. You already have access to that, but you need to contact your account manager. So that's what I want to mention is that you have a dedicated account manager. Her name's Jennifer Pydosh. I believe she's on the line. And so all you have to do is you click that link below. And actually, let me see if I don't think I can put in the chat function, but at 1 o'clock, you're going to get an email that's going to have this link. You can go ahead and click that, schedule your service call with Jennifer. It's about 20 minutes. All we're going to do is we're just going to share with you the details for you to go ahead and provide this for your students. There's really nothing you have to do, but we just want to make sure that you've got the right information, but also the communication. So we've got email templates, we've got like one sheets that kind of list the program. So if it's something you just want to send off to the parents, that's totally fine. So we have all of that put together and Jennifer has the access for that. But also if you want to consider any private programs for your school, she can answer those questions as well. But again, 20-minute call. It's what we do to go ahead and get you set up. So you just click below to get started. And then at this point, I will open it up to Q&A. So we've covered pretty much everything in terms of the program. I just want to pause here and see if anyone has any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat function. So if you have any questions related to what's going on with the SATs, the ACTs, college counseling, scholarships, I'm here to answer it for you. So leave that as an opportunity. Wait a couple minutes. And while we're waiting for those questions, so I know that a lot of people right now are concerned about test optional, right? And what that means, right? So we talked a little bit before at the beginning of the call, but just understand again, right? So test optional does not mean test blind. So you're going to want to make sure that students, if it's possible for them to take the test, really, really encourage it, right? Because them having that extra data point really does mean the difference in terms of being able to show an admissions officer your academic credentials on top of everything else. So that is something you're gonna want to really keep in mind. The other part too is I know test dates are being pushed back. We work a lot with other organizations like ours, but also within the, we're in kind of understanding what's going on with the College Board and the ACT. And here's what I can tell you. Colleges really need a way to evaluate students. So even though test optional is here, what I can tell you is that it's not trending towards test blind. They need that data to evaluate students for admission. So, what I would say is that whatever we can do to kind of ensure students are able to take the test, that's the priority. But the good part is now your students have access to a program that's going to at least put them starting off on the right foot. Okay, so I don't think we have any questions at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and end the call. But like I said, you're going to get an email in the next half hour that's going to have Jennifer's information for you to go ahead and click that link. But if you have any other questions,